Hey my dudes, my name is Cecilia and welcome to my kitchen here in Stockholm, Sweden. Today we are making ÄPPELBULLAR. So these are Swedish style apple buns. There are 1,000 different ways to do this. If you Google them, you're gonna get so many different ways of incorporating apples into the buns, so many different shapes, so many different styles. Today I am just vibing. I've never actually done this before, but I've made the dough 10 trillion times at this point, and I've made apple pie 10 trillion times at this point in my life. So why don't we just put the two together, see what we get. Let's get started. A quick note before we start the dough, there are two things I have changed from my original recipe. One is that instead of milk, I'm using buttermilk. And then also the original recipe calls for 23 grams of ground cardamom, but I only have 15 grams at home and I'm way too lazy to go to the grocery store. So we're just going with 15 grams today. You can skip it. You can do the 15 grams. You can do the 23 grams that's in the original. You do you, bestie. Into the bowl, 500 grams of buttermilk, 1,100 grams of flour, 200 grams of sugar, 15 grams of salt, 15 grams of ground cardamom, 70 grams of fresh yeast, and 200 grams of softened butter. Place the bowl on the mixer, and we're gonna use our hook attachment. Mix for 5 minutes on slow speed just so the dough can come together. Now that everything is mixed together, we can put it onto a medium-low speed. My machine has 5 speeds and I usually put it on 2.5, 3-ish. Any faster than that and you're just gonna get that dough hook just whipping around and you're actually gonna break down those gluten strands instead of like building them up. And we want a lot of gluten development in this dough so that our buns taste nice and squishy and soft and how we want them. This usually takes anywhere between half an hour and 45 minutes. I think my machine is starting to weaken though, because lately it's been taking me about an hour, like a full hour to get the dough to where I want it to go. But I think that's a my machine problem and not a dough problem. Start with half an hour and then check every 10 to 15 minutes after that. It's been 45 minutes. Could this go for another 15 minutes? Yeah, sure. I think I want to shape these like cinnamon roll style, and that shaping requires less gluten development because it has less tension in the shaping than say when I do like a twisty style or when I do like how I do for the cardamom buns or the walnut buns. Those styles need a lot of gluten and to be very elastic because I'm working with the dough so much, but because I just want to do the cinnamon bun style, it's gonna be fine. Plastic wrap, pop this out of the bowl. And you want your piece of dough to be in a thin-ish, rectangular-ish shape. Right now the dough is very tense. It wants to come back together. You can feel that just in like pressing it out, the dough wants to spring back. That's what I mean by tension. When rolling that out, like we don't want that. We want the dough to be nice and relaxed so we can get a nice big piece of dough. The thing is, it needs time to relax. And in that time that the gluten strands are relaxing, the yeast is also working. Well, we don't want the yeast to be working right now. We don't want any sort of proofing. So we're gonna wrap this in plastic and pop it in the fridge so it can relax, but not proof. So we want it to be thin-ish so that it can cool quickly and evenly. If you were to just put that mound of dough straight into the fridge, it's like the Earth's core, right? Just because the crust is cool, the center remains really warm, and then it's going to puff up and it's gonna be weird and it's not gonna help us when we roll out, and it's just not good. Okay, so we have our rectangle here and you just want to place it on the plastic and wrap her up. There we go. And I need to do the other side as well. I also like to use plastic wrap because then the dough doesn't form a skin at all, which can also crack and be weird when we're rolling it out. It's just not nice. Now we want to place this in the fridge for at least an hour or until it's cold all the way through. While our dough chills, let's make the two fillings. We're starting with a cinnamon brown sugar butter filling. Take 300 grams of softened butter, 150 grams of sugar, 100 grams of brown sugar, 3 grams of vanilla sugar, 3 grams of salt, 6 grams of cinnamon, and the zest of 1 lemon. Mix those together. Make sure it's really well combined. We want this at room temperature when we spread it out, so don't refrigerate it. Put it to the side, leave it there until we're ready to roll. Our next filling is, of course, the apples. I am taking 5 apples because I feel like they're quite small, and these are Swedish Discovery apples. I'm using them, one, because I love their flavor, but most importantly because they hold their shape when cooked. I know this because I have one in my oatmeal every single morning. If you do not have Swedish Discovery apples because you are not in Sweden, then I would suggest something like a Granny Smith apple. A quick Google search will tell you what apples in your region hold your shape and which fall apart while cooking. Take a large bowl and fill with cold water. Take our lemon that we just zested, and we want half the juice for our acidulated water bath. Just leave that whole lemon in there and save this guy for later. I like to have a third bowl to peel the apples into. Peel and drop directly into the acidulated water so it doesn't brown. Working quickly, take your apples and dice them. Over the diced apples, squeeze in the other half of lemon. We want all that juice and none of those seeds. Wow, I did a really terrible job at that, you guys. Take away all the seeds you've dropped into your apples and add in 100 grams of sugar. Stir that all together. Throw all of the sugared apples into a small pot. Now, could I have sugared these in the pot? Yes. Did I think about that? No. Doesn't really matter one way or another. Turn your stove to a medium low, and we just want to cook the apples down until they get nice and tender. It's been 5 minutes and our apples are nice and soft. We love to see it. Be gentle when you're stirring so you don't cause them to break. I have here a slurry of 1 tablespoon of cornstarch mixed with 1 tablespoon of water, and we're just gonna throw that in and let that cornstarch mixture thicken a little bit for about a minute. See how it like instantly just is like, we love that. And throw it directly into a bowl. Once this cools, we will be ready to go. Our dough is nice and cold. Look at that, gorgeous. Little sprinkle of flour on both sides, rolling pin, and we just want to roll it out into a nice big rectangle. This is about 3/4 of a centimeter, roughly 1/4 of an inch thick, maybe more like 2/3 of a centimeter-ish. Starting with the butter filling. We want to spread it out evenly over the entire piece of dough, all the way to the edges. Try to get your butter filling as evenly as possible, but also like it's gonna be fine. You don't need to fuss too much. That's pretty good. And now the apple filling. I'm not quite sure how this is gonna spread, so I'm gonna try to sprinkle first. I'm gonna leave a lot of room here so that as we roll it, hopefully this will have something to like stick to and it won't like squish out. It's the theory anyway. We'll see what actually happens. I do still want it to go all the way out to my edges. All right, I think we're just gonna have to call that good enough for a government job today and see what happens. Starting from the top line, we just want to fold it over just a little bit, and then you pick it up and you fold it over. You're stretching and folding over. And again, we're picking it up and we're folding it over. Other side, I skipped the middle, pick it up, fold it over, and the middle follows. So we go to the edge, and now we're really paying attention to making sure we're moving along this line here. And because this is so wet and like slippery, you really want to like pick it up and fold. You don't want to just like roll like this like you normally would, because it's just going to be like too slick almost. These are going to be roll fat boys. And I'm kind of stretching when I get to the end. Oh boy, very fat, big chunky boys. Okay. All right, this edge is sealed. It's not as straight as I would like for it to be, but life happens sometimes. I think that's as good as it's going to get. We have our handy dandy scale and our large pastry knife. Strictly speaking, if you don't want to scale these, you don't have to, but the more different they are in weight, the more differently they're going to proof and bake. And so you want them to be as even as possible. I'm gonna try to cut these into 100-gram pieces. We want big boys today, but we'll see what happens. Sometimes the universe tells me what I'm supposed to be cutting to. See, like this was 130, okay. And that was 90. That was 107. We're just gonna go for it today. How big is this? It's 130. Okay. I got messed up in my brain because now to get the right weight, I have to cut them really thin. And what I wanted for them to be was really tall. I confused myself and I should have had the long side of the dough facing me instead of the short side. So that was my mistake. But we're just gonna have to lay in the bed that we made, and that's that on that. And these buns are just gonna have to be big ol' American-sized buns, I guess. See, this is what I mean by the universe telling me what size they're gonna be. This one was also right on the dot, 130. So apparently, the universe is telling me to make really big fat buns today. And who am I to argue? Now, obviously, not all of these are gonna fit in here. We're gonna do a bunch in here and then a bunch on other trays. I have in total 2, 4, 6. We're gonna fit 12 in here. Yeah, let's fit 12 in here. And I'm gonna really squish them in. Oh, I have really heavily buttered this, and there's a piece of parchment paper on the bottom, by the way. Okay, I'm wondering if I should actually do 16 in this tray. You know what? Let's do it. Let's go for it. I'm probably gonna regret that decision later, but let's go for it. All right, there we go. Another butter and parchment lined tray. Now these just need to proof until they are about doubled in size. I'm just gonna lightly cover them with some plastic wrap. Sometimes I do damp towels, sometimes I do plastic wrap. I think in this case, a damp towel would just stick to the apple, but you can do whatever you want. Also, my buns in the past couple weeks have been taking an hour and a half to proof pretty consistently. Usually when I try to do buns like this in like December, January, February, it takes the buns at least 3 hours to proof. Really no set time. It's more just like, are they doubled in size? Can you see that they've risen? Do they have those little yeasty bubbles? I'll show you when these are ready. So in conclusion, these are gonna proof. I'm gonna clean up and we'll check back in a minute. It's been exactly an hour and a half and these guys are looking so good. They are so ready to go. Not only have they doubled in size, they're looking puffy, they're looking fluffy. You can see like the air bubbles. You can see where the yeast has grown and expanded and created air pocket. They're ready. We love. I was going back and forth about what I wanted to top them with today, and I think I'm just gonna keep it real simple. We're gonna start with some egg wash over the top. This is gonna help them get a really beautiful golden color as they bake in the oven. And then once they come out of the oven, I've made a small batch of simple syrup. This is literally just 50-50 sugar and water. Let it boil until the sugar dissolves. Takes like literally a minute. And as they come out of the oven, I'm gonna brush them with simple syrup. This is gonna give them a lovely shine, and it's also going to hydrate the crustier parts of the rolls so that they can continue to stay really like soft. I'm not quite sure about the bake times, to be honest with you, because these are just so much bigger than my normal buns, and these are really squished up together. So I'm gonna assume that these in the casserole are gonna take way longer than these guys, but we'll see. I am so pleased with how these turned out, especially because I've never done this before. I think they turned out really, really good. They both went into the oven at 200 degrees Celsius. These were in for 15 minutes and these were in for more like 25. At the very end, I was a little worried about these taking too much color on the top, so I did switch my oven so it only had bottom heat, but that was only for the last 5 minutes. Also, if you're starting to get concerned about like, oh, like they're getting a lot of color on the outside, but maybe they're not done on the inside and you're a little worried, you can always take the internal temperature with an instant read thermometer, and you want them to be about between 91 and 93 degrees Celsius internally. But I just am super excited with how they turned out. They are big boys, especially these ones are definitely more in the American style than in the Swedish style, but I can't help myself. Sometimes the American just oozes out of me. I think I'm gonna try this one. These are pretty hot still. That's so appley. I mean, obviously, but like, wow, I'm not gonna lie, that is so much more appley than I thought it was going to be. Like, obviously I put in a lot of apples. I knew that it was gonna be an apple bun. But a lot of times you get apple buns in this country and they taste like not very much apple, TBH. But this is really like, this is so good. And that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked today's episode, then please like and subscribe. And I hope that you have a good day and that I'll see you around next week. Hej då!